The world isn't getting quieter. The pace, the pressure, the opinions, they're only getting louder. The peace isn't found in silence. It's built in the storm. I am Sean Tucker, health scientist, breathwork facilitator, and self-mastery coach. And this is Grounded in the Noise. Real conversations with fighters, healers, and truth seekers about what it really takes to stay calm, clear, and connected. Even and especially when life gets loud. Breathe in, ground down, let's begin.
What growth comes from sitting in the comfort zone? Any job that I've typically ever left is when I was in that comfort zone. I've got to get out of here. I've got to keep learning. The best leaders I've had are the ones that show me how it's done. I don't work well for managers who just do this, fill that report. Never worked. Big sales. No one knows for sure whether you'll win, right? So I talk about two things, attitude and activity. If you show up with the right attitude and you can show me what you've done on a weekly basis, I guarantee your chances of success are higher.
Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Grounded in the Noise podcast with me, Sean Tucker. And I am absolutely delighted to welcome our first guest today is Steve Tolen. So if you don't know Steve is a senior sales executive and growth partner with more than 20 years of experience helping founders and teams redefine how they sell and they lead. Through his 5 before the call framework and change the game events, Steve blends mindset and mastery to turn cold calls into warm conversations and transform high pressure sales into real human connection. That's not the reason I got him in the show. I'm really excited to have you on the show today, Steve. Welcome to Grounded in the Noise.
Mate, thank you very much. And mate, I'm delighted to be here. I've had my haircut, so the fade's looking fresh. So hopefully the conversation is looking fresh. But no, mate, on a serious note, delighted to be here. Looking forward to the conversation, mate. And thank you very much. I feel blessed to be one of the first guests, my friend. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm honored to actually have asked you, and you said, yeah, of course I'll do it. Because one of the reasons I think for me to ask you was you inspired you ignited a spark in me to actually go ahead and join this 20-week Fight to Warrior training camp, which for those of you who don't know, I'm hopping into the Octagon on December 6th next month. So we've got about four weeks or so. And for those who don't know Steve, I'd love for you to give insight into this. Why would that have inspired me?
Mate, I admire you, and I think fair play for doing it, right? And it's something every person should do at some point in their life. You and I connected, and it was a journey I'd been on myself. Similarly, about 5 years ago, and I was just looking for the trophy, but it's upstairs. Yeah, I went on a journey in late 20, early 21, sorry, and it was actually the corporate fighter, and I was 44 years of age. I broke the century for all the wrong reasons when I jumped on the scales late, coming out of COVID. And my first response was the scales are wrong. Clearly that wasn't true. And I knew it was time to do something about it, mate. And, with me, I don't do things by halves. Corporate fighter, I signed up. I think I was one of the second eldest that was actually in there. There was actually two guys who were older than me, so third out of 30 people. And it was a 12-week fight camp that was one of the best experiences of my life. And I say that even now, and I get a bit of a funny feeling, mate, because it meant so much to me to dedicate 12 weeks of my life, 4 nights a week, 5 training sessions as a minimum, but I was probably doing more like 8 to 10, and a 44 to dedicate. It was such a life-changing experience, and did it for a good cause. And so, mate, I think full respect for you for doing it, and I understand what it means to you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So good on you.
Yeah, mate. I mean, when you shared that you jumped into the boxing ring after those 12 weeks, and you sent me some videos, which I was like, wow, man, this guy is intense. I love it. I love your energy and just the way that you're just real, right? You're just real and raw with people, because people smell the bullshit and they can smell it from a mile away. So I think not only just having you as a guest on to introduce what the show is about today, but really to give an insight into what you're all about and what I'm all about too. Because I've said this to you quite a few times, that I feel like when I'm having a chat with you, I'm almost talking to myself, because you do care so much about overcoming the odds, right? And just not backing down and just fighting to the end. And even if you're getting beaten to a pulp, you still rise. You still get up and you still fight. So I'd love for you to speak into that a little bit about like, what is the thing that really does drive you? What do you think it is?
But
What is that for you? What is your purpose?
been on a journey, right? Like it's funny. So we take the boxing example. When I did that, even now I could lose a few can of kegs and stuff. I'm 48 now, nearly, 49, kind of coming up soon. There's, once you kind of hit 40, a lot of people just decide that it's time, that you can just give up and stuff like, and whatever, each their own. For me, I'm an intense guy. I always want to better myself, right? Like I'm always an avid learner. So I talk about two things, mindset and mastery. If you don't believe you can do something, don't even bother. And this is why a lot of my kind of change the game and kind of my philosophies came from. Mate, I will never be a world champion boxer, right? But when I did that camp, and this is where I think a lot of people kind of got me wrong or probably misunderstood, I could be the best that I could be, the best version of myself. And you only, that night when I fought a lad who was a lot younger than me and stuff, and we were probably similar skill levels and stuff. And it's funny, a chap spoke to me yesterday about it, said, "You lost the plot." And I was like, "Oh, I was just, mate, I was in the zone, right? I was there to win, basically. I've been through it, and I'd put myself there. For those that don't know, I dropped 16 kilo in 12 weeks, right? I wasn't messing about, and I raised money for a good cause, and had about 50 friends there, which was, even now, it's still got such an emotional tie. And that's where my kind of link to the boxing kind of came from, mate, because it's easy to think, oh, he's a macho guy, or he's this. It's not about that. But anyone that's kind of done it at whatever level, once you cross those ropes, it's you versus you. And this is the best parallel to sales that I can ever see. My kids, my wife, driving bonkers all the time, mate. I don't sit still. I'm always moving. I'm always on the go. I'm always looking at kind of what's next, all about the future. I'm never content with what I've kind of got, and that's just drive, mate. I've had this drive, insatiable drive, since I was young. And someone said to me, and it's funny, I boxed last week, and it was where I was actually launching the first version of my podcast, which was Change the Game. And I had this vision, and I wanted it to be in the boxing gym with a boxing ring in the background, because life is a battle. Sales, talk about recruitment and etc. It's a battle. And in sport, you have one opponent, or one team versus one team. Business life, you have many, and there's like this, it's like snakes and ladders, mate. And when I told people I was doing it, a few people were, "Don't do that. It looks this, it's that. Oh, look, wrong image and stuff like that." And I went, "This is how I want to do it, and this is me, and this is who I am." So I'm authentic, and I'm unashamedly, this is who I am. The guests who kind of came on, and the response since, and it hasn't even come out, people get it and they go, "That's insane. It's different. It stands out, right?" Like, so I think, I don't know, I'm kind of rambling there, mate, but I think purpose. Don't be afraid to be yourself. Always keep pushing. I think what I've learned through life, and certainly over the last kind of few years as I've kind of launched my business, is you only get out what you put in. You can overthink a lot of stuff, and I'm a massive deep thinker. Drive myself nuts. What makes it the pain or that kind of go away is doing stuff. And I shared in a sales team meeting the other day. I shared a picture, and there's the thinker and the doer. And I said, "And I'm the doer." I said, "So, we can think and we can plan, and planning's good." I said, "Or we can just get shit done."
Yeah.
And the more shit you get done, guess what? The pain kind of goes away. So, mate, I think that's kind of my philosophy in life, mate. I don't do things by halves.
Yeah. And where does the learning come from? Does it come from the thinking or the doing?
The doing, mate. Definitely.
100%.
Like, I can tell you right now, we shared, I'm hosting an event a week on Tuesday. The venue fell through yesterday. What do you do? Do you sit there? Do you stress, or do you just sort it out? Sort it out and end up getting a better deal than probably what we were offered in the first place. It's no secret to this, mate. Like, and I think you can have analysis paralysis on everything, and in particular in sales, right? I mean, I've done so many personality types. I'm a red personality, right? I don't need a 55-page document. I want someone who's much smarter and analytical than me to read that 55-page document and say, "Here's the pros, here's the cons," right? And I'll look at it and go, "Okay, cool. So if we do this, if we do it, it's fantastic, right? There's a really good chance, all right, groundbreaking. Well, whoa, well, here's all the negatives." Like, yeah, but if we can do it, there's a really good chance.
Yeah.
I'm probably on the page, but this is where you need the different personalities, the yellows, the blues, the greens, the more analytical, just to kind of paint the picture. So, mate, I'm very much, hopefully, come across as self-aware in that regard, which is because if you just got a team of reds, everyone will go off in a different kind of direction, mate.
Everyone's trying to take the
Noise,
steering
and
wheel.
a lot of testosterone or what have you, but you might not get a lot of stuff finished.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think your take on stress comes across a little bit different. So many people, they'll sit in stress and they'll think it's stressful, and then that will continue to stress them out, right? And physiological stress, when it's elevated, when it's chronic, becomes a problem. And I think you've noticed this with different, challenges you've had, and I certainly have noticed it in mine too. But when you really face that stress or that challenge head on, because everybody has stress, right? It's inevitable. It's part of life, but it's your perception and how you manage it that actually determines what comes from that. And when you charge at it, right? That's what I feel like you do, is you charge at it.
Mate, one of my favorite brands, like I'm a boxer, and one of their sayings is quite simply LFG. And it's a phrase I'd used even before I kind of come across it with boxer, like, let's F and go. That's just my take on life, mate, right? Like, I'm closer to 50 than I am to 40. I just, you get one shot at this, mate. Like, and in everything, high performers don't understand low performers and vice versa. I don't understand people that don't want to get out there and just tear it up every day. Like if I put this in a kind of work perspective, I mean, you know this, right? Any of my friends, like they say, and it's not a surprise, I don't switch off, right? Like, and I don't. Sometimes people get emails off me at 4 or 5 in the morning, and I'm not saying that's healthy, but there's a difference between doing meaningless or work that is pointless, right? Versus if I'm involved in stuff and I go, I know that this is leading somewhere, you don't have to turn me on. And I get drawn to those people. You're one of them, right? Like there's another good friend, Mario Beckish, right? You know very well. These people, you see them a mile off, mate. Like they've got that mindset that they're just failure is not an option, right? But you might not win, but you'll learn, and at least you gave it a go. And I think, mate, that's the thing with stress. I can tell you right now, again, I'll be open. I had a rough week this week with sleep, various things. The brain was just going and this, that, and the other. And I'm almost waiting for the next day to know that I can take action on things. Like I
Yeah.
just said, a venue fell over there today. Okay, cool. No worries. I shouldn't be in the city today, but you know what? I'll be in the city for 9 o'clock. I'll sort it. By 10:30, it was sorted. Bang, done. Could have stressed, could have sent emails, or you can take action. And when I apply this to sales, this is the one thing, like, mate, I look now and I think everyone loves the compensation that can come with sales, right? They like the salary. They like to be the peacock god and you flutter the feathers. Here's the deal. You can automate everything. You don't even have to leave the house anymore to get food, drink, water, whatever. You can do everything. Sales is no different. But those that do leave the house and do the fundamentals and meet people and build rapport and build trust, and amplify their activity using smart technology, guess what? They're the ones that are going to leave you in the dust. And
Yeah.
this is what I see time and time again. And I see people, mate, that just do not want to change, right? They're like, you can send an email. You can. You could pick up the phone. You could go and meet the person over coffee and have an open conversation. All these kind of things, mate. This is where, and the gap is getting wider
Yeah, it
because
is.
I think people are getting lazier,
It's
for want of.
comfort-driven society. Yeah,
It
absolutely.
is. And that's where, mate, I think hopefully if I stand out for the right reasons, it's probably that. The biggest compliments I get is I love your energy. Maybe that's the coffee or drink or whatever, mate. But, I think,
The Steve Tolen frequency. It's a certain level of caffeine. Oh, I love that. There's really so much to unpack in such little time, but I'd love for you to speak into, like, what is the thing that keeps you centered, right? Because you can't be on all of the time. And what I mean by that is, yes, you can, because either you're alive or you're dead, right? So if we use that frame for a second, either you are alive or you're completely dead, right? What is the thing that allows you to restore your energy?
so for me, and I am on most of the time, right? Like, I don't know whether that's ever gonna change. I think I'm probably not surprised. I'm an extrovert, right? I have to be out and about. So I'll give you an example in a working week at the moment. I work in a contract. A lot of internal calls. Monday kind of drips into Tuesday, right? So, you're doing 4 days. No one has to tell me to get into the city and meet people, on a Wednesday or a Thursday, right? And I set a target with the team, be 5 people a week. And I always meet about 10 people, right? No one has to tell me to do it. So what gets me out of bed in the morning is I also have to exercise. And I think you know this, right? Boxing's my thing. As I say, I'm not going to be a world title, but I love the challenge, mate. I love the intent. I think I sent you a screenshot the other day where I burnt about 1,000 calories in 40 minutes. Like they just put me through the ringer. Felt fantastic afterwards, mate. Like, I like being pushed, and that when you're in that comfort zone, you can go and trundle along and have an average session, a 5 out of 10, and someone goes, "Oh, this guy, like if there's a 20-odd-year-old in there who's doing it, I want to go at that same pace, mate." Right? Like, so that's it. So training keeps me going. Although since I kicked off the business in July, you make sacrifices, and training has been kind of one of them. I've had a few back injuries, a few niggles and stuff. It drives me nuts because then I know that, the cortisol builds up. You have to go and get back on the horse. So, I do that and I enjoy it. But mate, really getting out and doing productive work and making a difference is what kind of keeps me going in that sense. And if I kind of sum it all, sum it up and look at it from a family perspective, my kids probably, I drive them insane, right? Because again, I want them to do the best. You know what I mean? I want them to try hard. Like my eldest, who's in boarding school up in Bathurst. You know what I mean? Like he's a beast at the moment. Like he's on the weights, and it's all kind of clicked. And rugby's his thing, and he was playing for the B team or whatever. And and you talk about standards, and he's like, "Well, I want to get to the A's," and you can sugarcoat it and say, "Oh, or you can say, well, do you know what? Knuckle down, get in the gym, try hard, and see what happens, right? And also maybe adjust your attitude a little bit." But I tell you what, mate, this is real life. And again, I only practice kind of what I preach. But yeah, mate, that's me, unfortunately.
Yeah, it sounds like to relate that to the stress and to how you handle your situations or problems is it's finding the release, right? Is when the pressure builds up. And I think it's the same with sales is people get out, like people want to find the release before the pressure's even built up, right? And that actually will not get the sale across the line, first and foremost. But secondly, like you're not even going to do any damage. If we're talking about boxing, if the pressure's not there, then you're not really going to be in the zone and you're not going to be able to win, right?
Mate, so tell me what growth comes from sitting in the comfort zone. Like any job
Nothing.
that I've typically ever left is when I was in that comfort zone. I'm like, I've got to get out of here. I've got to keep learning. The best leaders I've had are the ones that show me how it's done. I don't work well for managers who just like do this, fill that report. Never worked. Take sales, right? No one knows for sure whether you'll win, right? So I talk about two things, attitude and activity. If you show up with the right attitude and you can show me what you've done on a weekly basis, I guarantee your chances of success are higher. If you do 10 calls a week, 20 calls a week, does that guarantee success? I do not know. The mindset and the mastery piece. But I know that if you upskill and you take feedback on board, your chances of success will increase, right? It's that simple. Nobody can control. And I spin that back to the boxing analogy, right? So two blokes or whatever, two females, whoever get into the ring, both the same weight, they both train for the same camp. One comes out victorious. Why is that, right? Like, and it's not just physical, you know what I mean? It's mental. Because someone gets in there and they go, I am not going to lose today, or this, that, and the other. And it's the same, mate. It's the same in business, right? Like if you think, and that's what I talk about, and say, if you believe that if you get on the call and you believe, excuse me, that it's going to be a terrible call, I guarantee it will be. And the person I feel sorry for is the poor bugger on the other end. Now, if you get on the phone and you've got high energy and you've got presence, we feed off energy. People pick up on that, mate, right? Like, so this is the thing in terms of what are you kind of projecting? And that's where, you can probably see the similarities there between sport and kind of business. You know what I mean?
100%. You got to know yourself pretty well. You got to be very self-aware to know how to direct and be intentional in whatever you do. And having that relationship to how you handle your life, because they do say how you do one thing is how you do all things. But you can simply change how you do all things by just focusing on one thing.
And do it really well.
Yeah, do it. Exactly. Do it really well. Like pay attention. The best thing I've found is give your absolute attention to whatever it is. When it comes to just, I don't know, being vulnerable, right? In that moment, because I don't know if it's a word you would use, but you shared things with me, and I'm sure you've been pretty open about it as well. Like vulnerability is a great strength when it is used from a place of like great awareness. But if it's not coming from a place of great awareness, it's usually a weakness.
And people often perceive that if I talk about leadership for a second, if I look at the best leaders I've worked for are the ones that, at the end of the day, we're all people, right? And I've worked for some amazing leaders, right? Some ultra successful leaders, proper entrepreneurs and etc. And the one thing I look for is empathy. And, if I can tell you now, in my career, 3 times I've left a business. And there was a pattern, apart from when I moved overseas, and I won't tell you who or whatever, but the people I left, it's the old adage, right? People leave a poor boss, and they didn't give a shit about me as a person. That was the biggest thing. So for me, I can tell you right now, I am terrible with spreadsheets. I'm probably a little bit disorganized and irrational with stuff. But as a leader, I would hope people say, yeah, he moves a million an hour, but he's got a lot to give. He's got a lot to, he'll make time, right? We can kind of connect with him, right? Like, and I've done the personality kind of profiles, and it was funny. I challenged one the other day because it said he's all about, in it for himself or whatever. It's all about prestige and stuff. And I said, you couldn't have got it any further from the truth. Yes, I'm driven, and yes, I want to be successful, but I think if you're just motivated by money or a job title, you'll be really, really hollow and shallow because it will come back to bite you. So, what I'm more driven by is the purpose, the direction, and the unachievable goal where someone says, you can't do this. And I'm like, well, just bring it on. But I think as I say, from a leadership kind of perspective, those who say, do you know what, Steve? I actually don't know. Or maybe I'm not the best person. Like, again, if someone come to me and said, can you tell me about this? If I don't know it, I'll take on anybody for sales, mindset, build brand building, motivating a sales team, whatever that. No problem. I'll take on anyone in the world. But if you come to me and you go, Steve, what do you think about the IT strategy or whatever, or just have a look at this, I'll be like, guys, you're wasting your time, and I think people respond to that. The best leaders are the ones that know their strengths and they really kind of play into it, but also know their development needs.
Yeah. And I'd love to speak into, like, there's something you mentioned earlier, just like that unrelenting belief in yourself or the purpose that you have, right? It may not be yourself directly, but it's the purpose that you hold. And I remember watching a Netflix documentary earlier in the year, Ned Brockman ran
It's
from
great. I've seen it. Yeah.
Perth to Sydney, right? Insane.
Insane. Yeah.
Absolutely insane. And, he's not a runner. This is the beauty of it. Like you said, you're not a professional boxer, but you felt called to hop into this 12-week challenge or this 12-week corporate boxer training camp, and you went for it. And I think it's those moments that you choose to do the hard thing and find your thing that's going to make you really uncomfortable is when you define who you really are. So how much have you got to know yourself through the hard shit that you've had to do?
Mate, wow, great. What a deep question that is. The boxing was something, and I say this, like I'll give you an example. When I was doing it, I was 100, it was 102 kilo, right? And I'm friggin' hell, I'm 5'8". Wasn't good. And I remember someone said something to me and he went, what are you fighting at super heavyweights? And this kind of stuff. Okay. You put yourself out there 4 or 5 weeks in, 6 weeks in, weight starting to drop. And I was in the heavyweight category and a drop, which would be kind of cruiserweight if you looked at that, right? So then I come in at the top end. And my skill was terrible. Like, what I mean, defense was terrible. I think I mentioned to you, the first time I sparred, I got my nose rearranged and stuff like that. And I always remember having a great coach, and I've talked about this. There's a guy called Rupert, and he took me to one side. You all right? And I said, yeah, I'm rubbish. Right? I'm going to get beat up. And he said, no, you just had a bad spar. He took me to one side, and I did some extra work, and I did some one-to-ones with him. And I always remember a session this one night where he made me get in the ring 3 times, 3 spars, and he said, you can't hit. And they said to him, you can hit him, but don't try and knock him out. And I still remember it vividly. Like in the last round was a guy, Lucas, who was like 6'4", and he said, you go and go hell for leather. I was like, thanks very much. Like, anyway, there was a point to it, right? He said at the end, he goes, and I'll never forget, he goes, how'd you feel? I got out and he goes, you didn't get hurt, did you? And now he goes, you're fucking bulletproof. You are bulletproof. And I remember just going, you know what I mean? And it was that confidence, that leader, someone having the belief in you. I made that again. This is me. I was never going to win a world title, right? Like, so there was other guys in there who've got much more technical ability. It doesn't matter. But I was the best that I could be. and I was there, and it pushed me on. And then my confidence kind of grew, and then I had another problem. I could defend, but I couldn't hit, and so they all kind of came together for me week 10. And by the time fight night came was there, I was ready. And now again, mate, someone said to me today, the guy you're fighting, maybe again, you can only fight the opponent that's there, right? And
100%.
there's other people. I'm never going to be a professional boxer, but here's the thing: the amount of people that realize the journey I've been on and the respect. And when people gave you stick, I always said to them, "Have you done it?" Just asking, because I dropped 16 kilo. You know what I mean, which was a big thing for me, and
Yeah.
probably be losing a few right now after the few months I've had. But mate, I did it, and I don't know whether I'd ever be able to do it again and dedicate so much. But it was just one of the best experiences, mate, of my life. And I think it actually, if I think back to that time and what it did back then, it set me on a journey. I'd been at the same job for 5.5 years. I was with a great company, global recruitment business, Allegis, and I was safe and I was paid reasonably well, and I knew that I wanted more, and it proved to me that I was capable of more, and it led me to my first job as without sounding like a tool, I wanted to run a company, and that's where I got the job with James Kahn, the private equity firm. Became CEO, building a business, and it led me to that, and it was that. And I actually remember talking about that journey, the boxing journey, in my interview, and they're probably like, "Who's this nutter?" But actually, if you think about it, what do you want? You want someone that's not going to give up, who's tenacious. And it served me kind of quite well, mate. Every time I go into stuff now, people know straight away that the guy's just not going to kind of give up.
I'm not here to mess around.
No, yeah, but yeah, mate. And the training over the last couple of months, again, it's not. I've had I've had no routine, because again, I relaunched the business in July 1, and I've gone hell for leather every day since. But I'll get back there. It's starting to kind of come back, mate. But sometimes your life, and for any kind of entrepreneur, at times balance is out of whack. And unfortunately for me at the moment, if I'm being really honest, my balance is not there with the family. But here's the one thing: Ruth gets it. And the one thing I would say, we're not getting too deep on this, is there's days where I've kind of come back and when it's too hard, or it's there, so there's no money in the bank and stuff. And the easy thing, two things she could do: she could tear you down, or she could build you up. And she's never tore me down. It's always like, like, 'cause you're in it together, mate. And that's even last night we were talking. I said, we'll get through. I know where this is going and stuff, like, and that's that kind of belief, mate. If as much as you say it's so much about me, like, if she wasn't behind me 110%, I wouldn't
Yeah.
do it. You know what I mean? So I think it's really important to make sure I call that out. Otherwise, I'll get divorced.
No, it's very true. I mean, that support network, that support that you have in and around I suppose, your home, that's of most vital importance, I think. And then obviously as that extends out into your work and community as well. But speaking balance for a second, I think, because you just mentioned it, how do you find balance? Because life itself is always balanced, right? But
Yeah,
it's when we have a mind and we have a body, that we have a psychology and we have a physiology, right? And when things get really out of balance, like the symptoms start showing up in our body. How do you
mate. Like,
find it?
I'm definitely not, like, again, as I said, even though I'm from Liverpool, I always tell the truth. I'm probably, I don't think I'll win any awards for kind of work-life balance or whatever. Like, I'm all in. And I think if I take a very real view of this, and when so again, I worked a full-time job the last 12 months, right? And it wasn't the right opportunity, right? It's as much on me as the people that employed me. I went in expected something different. I felt like I wanted to do this thing on my own, right? However, so towards the end of the last, I knew I was leaving 3 months out. So what I did was I put myself through a fight camp. I dropped a load of weight again, and there's a picture of me about 2 days before I left. I did a virtual BD kind of workshop for a company called Job Adder, and I looked $1 million, right? And I felt really good, and I felt really trim. And then I finished on that Friday. That was a Wednesday. And on the Monday, it was go. I had no job. I don't mind saying, so I had like about 10K in the bank and stuff. Wouldn't even get me through the next month. Failure there is not an option.
Yeah.
And changed the game and this, that, and the other. And I kind of knew I was battling, and I secured a bit of work and this, that, and the other. Company I'm working with, the Encore, paid me to speak at a lunch. At the end of the lunch, they said, will you do 2 days? Which is about half of what I needed to be able to keep a roof over my head. And then within about 2 weeks, they come back, and then it went to that kind of, it ticked that box. So it took me about a month to 6 weeks. That was hard, man. And, you're a one-man band. I spend way too much time in this little office. Anyway, I went probably when I was thinking, so let's say August. August was full on. It was hard. Okay. For many reasons and stuff. I don't know whether the kids were off or whatever. No, the kids had just come back. Anyway, I wanted to do this event, just change the game. And the voice inside my head says, don't do it. You're too busy. You're this, you're that. You've got all this stuff. Anyway, and I'm going, okay, but I've got the venue. Okay, what else? I've got the speakers. What else? I've got people who want to sponsor. This is going to be a really hard kind of 4 weeks for you, right? Like, or 4 to 5 weeks. And I was like, okay, cool. So anyway, I sat here, and I had 4 weeks to go till the days. So it got to the Friday. So we're just inside 4 weeks. It took me a day to put the Eventbrite page together because I'm absolutely crap on that kind of stuff. Did it myself. And I spent the Saturday sending out individual emails because I had no automation stuff. And this is only a couple of months ago. And I worked out to the T. I went, I need 150 people to sign up for this. People thought it was bonkers. I'm like, no, I'm going to get 150. So I needed 37 and a half by the Friday. By the Friday, I got 50 signed up within a week, right? And that's how you do it, right? You take it step by step. And then it all just kind of came together. But I tell you that story because the day when I finally agreed to do this, I met Tom Samani, who was one of the speakers, 3 times coached the Matildas. I looked like shit. I hadn't slept. I was on painkillers for my back and stuff like this. I looked bloated compared to the guy 6 weeks ago who'd been in a job and this, that, the other. And I shared that at the event. I went, this is me and this is me here. And then at the time of the event, hopefully I looked a little bit better. But I said, this is reality, like, you know what I mean? When so when I talk about that balance piece, mate, that's a very kind of real, that's it. Like, you only get out what you put in, and there is times when you have to make sacrifice, and balance is not there. And I looked at it, mate, being honest, and went, for the next 6 months, I am gonna fucking give it everything, and that's it. And your Melbourne Cups and all this malarkey and doing X, Y, and Z. I'm like, no interest. I'm in the city. I'm working. I'm grafting. And my wife gets it, right? My kids, maybe not so. They're probably like, Jesus Christ. But if I know that I can do everything I can by the time I get to Christmas, which is what I'm looking at, then I can turn my hands out. And there was Matthew McConaughey who I saw a quote, and I'm actually not a massive fan of his, but I just saw, sorry, Matthew, but I saw a quote. If you're going to do it. Go all in, don't do it half-assed. And it's like, that is one thing, mate. And I thought, that's what I'm about. I'm just going to give it everything. So, sorry, mate, long-winded kind of answer, but I think at times there is, when balance is going to be out of whack.
I love it. The way that I take that is you really let the pendulum swing, and you go with that pendulum swing to wherever it goes and it takes you, as long as you're still focused on where you're going.
Yeah.
That's some really, really powerful stuff that you've shared. Before we finish up today's episode, because it's already gone past 30 minutes, I'd love to ask you one question that I tend to ask my guests on my previous podcast, and that is reflecting back to a time where you've, I guess, really sort of struggled. And let's maybe just go back to that moment where it was very, very uncertain, even just a few months ago. What is the thing you could tell that version of yourself right now, knowing what you know now, having lived that experience of the last few months? What would you tell him?
Control what you can control, I think, is a phrase I use all the time, right? And as I said to you before, I'm like, just take action. Knowing the pain or the discomfort or what have you that I've kind of been through on this journey, right? Which is, I understand why 99% of people wouldn't bother doing it.
Yeah.
That's the reality. And tell me anything in life, that if it was that easy, everyone would do it, right? Whether it's moving halfway around the world to come to Australia, setting up a business on your own, or doing whatever, right? Like, nothing comes easy. And if I think back to that very first, the boxing story, mate, like, again, whatever, and I've said this, whether it was the guy I fought, people said I was there, whatever, like, doesn't matter. The fact is I did it, and I did something amazing where people went, you fought in front of 700 people, right? Like, you break that down and go, very, so again, mate, I've always been like, what's the worst that could happen? And I think people get into this, the mind can paint so many stories of all these pitfalls and stuff, but just think the one thing and go, what could happen if it goes right, or if it goes 70% of what, the potential, it's fantastic. It's life changing. I'm sold. So I think that's the one thing, mate. I think don't let yourself just get caught up in this circle of negativity and what have you. Just take action and surround yourself with people, not just positive people. This is a key thing. People who've walked in your shoes, right? Like, so if you want to launch a podcast, speak to someone who's launched a podcast, right? You want to do some boxing, speak to someone who's done it, right? That's the other thing. Someone who's launched a business. You get where I'm going, right? Like
Yeah.
everyone's got advice. Be careful to who you listen to, because I guarantee a lot of them, whilst they might have good intentions, they probably haven't got, the educate or the background or the knowledge to kind of advise, mate. So I hope that
Yeah,
kind of answers the question.
absolutely. Focus on what you can control and yeah, paint positive outcome, right? And surround yourself with the people who are supportive of reaching that outcome. And a lot of the time, they might tell you that you're a dickhead. Like, what are you doing?
There probably aren't many people who open up an event and start singing Robbie Williams' Angels, which is what I do on a regular basis. But I tell you what, mate, I had this feedback the other day. Someone said to me, I have never been to an event, one where someone's had the courage to do that, because it could completely fail.
Yeah.
But the energy lift that was in the room, and here's the thing, people will laugh at this, right? Do I think I'm going to be on the next Australian Idol? No. Do I think that people go, this guy doesn't take himself seriously, takes his work seriously, but he's doing it for the benefit of the people in the audience to go, it's okay to relax and have a bit of a laugh. That's why I do it, mate. Don't take yourself too seriously. You know what I mean? So,
I
yeah,
love
man,
it.
that's
I
me.
love that. That is
Probably good.
that is a dynamite share of value. Thank you so much for sharing that. Before we finish up, Steve, I'd love to ask one last thing, and that's how do people find you and connect with you? And secondly is what have you got going on? What can people come to you and what offer, what event, what have you got coming up?
Yeah, mate. So appreciate it. Look, Steve Tolen, Stolen. So yes, my business is called Stolen and Co, which was the easiest thing. But whilst it's a bit tongue in cheek, the Co is, which I'm very proud of, is my network. So that is actually where the name came from. And so yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. Not too hard to find. My website it's just getting refreshed. It should go back up in the next week or so. Mate, anything to do with my key skills, building brands, activating your sales team, building the pipeline, winning business. That's what I'm about, mate. So I've spent a long time, 20 plus years in strategic sales, and also worked in the recruitment space. So that's my kind of forte. I like startups, wherever. Anyone that wants to build things and wants to learn how to evolve the sales strategy. That's what I'm about. So, in a couple of weeks, I'm doing an event which I'm really proud of with Matt Lakayev from Seven Figure Creates. That's taking place on Tuesday the 18th, so depending on when this goes out. But, he's Australia's number one certified LinkedIn kind of lead generator too. He spoke at my last event and I just pitched him and said, why don't we do something together? Mate, ask the question, right? So I'm really looking forward to that one. And again, we'll knock it out the park, mate. So, yeah, I'm not too hard to find, and please reach out, even if it's just to say hello.
Awesome, mate. Well, thank you so much for sharing. I'll make sure I add all the hashtags and the events in the show notes. But yeah, Steve, thanks so much for being here today. It's been an awesome and dynamic conversation. So yeah, thanks for listening in and see you all next time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to Grounded in the Noise. Remember, peace isn't passive, it is power. Stay grounded, even in the noise.